Hello everybody, welcome back to my once yearly video produced with an increasingly declining quality. We're talking about GitHub today, or what once was GitHub. Yeah, it's gone downhill pretty quick. I'm probably not the first one to show you this website here, the missing GitHub status page. 85% uptime, as opposed to the promised 99% uptime. And of course, that doesn't even mention the proliferation of AI slop that's on GitHub. Of course, that's not unique to GitHub, but yeah, it's pretty weak. It's pretty weak, and I think has gotten a lot of people, myself included, looking for alternatives, right? Which, obviously, there's stuff like Bitbucket or GitLab out there. Both of these are going to allow you to kind of host your own thing. Although I did notice when I went to both the GitLab and the Bitbucket website that they're also just happen to be bragging about powered by AI, and I mean, they're not owned by the worst tech company in the world. Well, anyways, because of the fact that I don't even really know where to move my repositories to if I wanted to, I have been experimenting with the idea of just setting up a little private GitHub server, or sorry, a private Git server, free from Microsoft's nonsense. Let's get to it. A couple of tools that we're going to need to make this happen. The first one is obviously you're just going to need OpenSSH. You're going to need that just to remote into the server, and then obviously Git. The other thing that we're going to need is a way to actually access the server. I personally like using Tailscale. Obviously not sponsored or anything. My channel's not even monetizable. Nobody's sponsoring these videos. Feel free to use any kind of VPN service that you would like to do, but definitely connecting to a server via a VPN as opposed to like any kind of reverse DNS or like port forwarding or anything like that is definitely the most secure way to do it. There's a couple of different options out there. I like Tailscale. Use what you like. If you are using Tailscale, it's really easy to just install with this curl command. I'm not going to run it because I don't want to break anything. Well, what the hell, I'll run it. Who cares? All it'll do is give you a link to either authenticate with your already existing Tailscale account or go ahead and set up an account. It will tell you, of course, you can do sudo systemctl enable now Tailscaled, and this is a systemctl process that will just automatically have Tailscale start every time you start the system, which is cool. I do have that enabled on the machine that I use as a server. I am not going to enable it on any sort of client machine. I just sort of, whenever I want to connect to my server, I'll do the old sudo Tailscale up. And of course the server will go up. We can confirm that with Tailscale status, and we can see all of our connected devices. In this case, what I'm going to be using Tailscale to connect to is this bad boy right here, MAKC Transit, which is just a little spare old ThinkPad that I have plugged in at my brother's house. It's not like a super sophisticated setup. If his power ever goes out, it is on battery power, so I can just like text him like, hey, can you turn the computer off, you know. But you know, this is a pretty great use for like old hardware, reusing stuff. And luckily, Tailscale, Git, OpenSSH are available on basically every CPU architecture, every operating system. It's kind of difficult to think of a system that you wouldn't be able to use as a server in this case. Anyways, the first thing that we need to do is just connect to the actual server. So let's go ahead and SSH to MAKC Transit. And by default, it's going to ask you to authenticate with the password for the machine that you're SSHing into, right? That's sort of standard SSH behavior. If you want to authenticate with an SSH key on your local system, I'll show you how to do that real quickly. I'd forgotten that I did that, but I'll go ahead and show you. All you would need to do is run the SSH keygen command to create an SSH key, and then once you have one, there is a handy little SSH utility built in called SSH copy ID, and then all you would need to do from there is put in the machine that you want to send that SSH key to, MAKC Transit, right? And then as soon as you run that, it'll copy over your SSH key. I don't know what'll happen if I run it again. And all keys were skipped because they already exist on the remote system. Yeah, makes sense, right? Anyways, that's just quickly how you go ahead and throw in your own SSH keys. It'll make authenticating a little securer. And also, I found out recently, it's way easier if you want to set up like a cron job or a CID task or something, like some kind of automation, to do authentication via SSH. Just throwing that out there. It makes sense, but I would have never actually thought about it. Anyways, let's go ahead and now remote into our system. give it the old SSH password. Okay, and now we are into our good old Ubuntu box. Cool. Basically what I've done to make this pretty simple is I just, right here in my home directory, I went ahead and just made a new folder called repo, right, to store all of my repos in. You can see I actually have already set up a couple of them, a couple of private servers. But anyways, the process for doing this is really, really simple. All you need to do is create, well, let's just make a directory called test, right? cd into test, and on the server, all you'll have to do is do a git init -- bear to create a bear git repository, right? Once you've done that, that's all the setup you got to do on the server. From that point, we're assuming right now that this is like a new repository that we're creating. So what I would do is just navigate to, let's put it in my downloads, right? I'll make a dir called test again, cd into that test folder, and let's just create a test file, right? Ooh, can't even type today. Okay, so take a look. Got just test file in here. And then from here, all we would need to do is go through basically the same process that we would typically use to start a new Git repository. All we're going to do is, rather than pushing to like GitHub or something like that, we're going to push to our server. So we do the old git init, git add, we'll just do -a to add everything. And then we'll do git commit -m, call this initial commit, right? Okay, and then if we run git branch, that actually is kind of important. Depending on which version of Git you have, or maybe even an operating system, it's going to default to either pushing everything to a master branch or a main branch. Make a note of what your branch is called. In my case, it's master. Anyways, at that point, all we need to do is run git remote add origin and go ahead and tell it where to push to. So in this case, it's going to be Mac at MAKC transit, and we'll give it the location, which will be that repo folder that we created, and of course the test directory inside of there, right? And then just the first time that you push to the server, you're going to want to run git push and then add on -u origin and then whatever branch. So in this case, master, right? Again, it's going to ask us to authenticate, and we immediately have an issue. Oh, yep, I screwed it up. Yeah, I see what I did. This is actually a good opportunity because literally every single time that I've tried to set up the remote origin, I've made a typo and ended up having to redo it. So if you, whenever you're running the git remote add command, screw up the location that you want to push to, what you can do is you can run git remote -v to tell you where you've set the origin, which in my case I set to home/mac/repo. The path is actually repos/test. Screwed that up. To fix that typo, all you need to do is, is run git remote set URL origin, and then do your best to actually include the proper location, right? So let's try that one more time. Repos/test. Set that up, and then once again, for the first push, we're going to run git push -u origin master. And we can see new branch, master, push to master. If you wanted to test it, probably the easiest way to actually test it would be to just go to a different folder and then clone that repository somewhere else. So we do like git clone got MAKC transit home Mac repos test. Oh, I am full of typos today. And then if we go into that test folder, we can see that test file that we made, right? So it is indeed functioning. From here on out, this is going to function exactly the same as it would pushing to GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, whatever you're used to, right? If I go into that test file and want to do some changes, right? I would just add them all, right? and then git push. It works exactly the same as you'd be used to it working. It's just on your own server. But of course, the bigger issue here isn't so much just how do I create a new repository, more like, hey, I have a whole bunch of repositories already here. How could I go about maybe just moving them off of GitHub onto something else, in this case, my own server. So what I'm going to do is let me cd into my documents where I have a repository called T3. And this is sort of the code name for a writing project that I've been working on, and it is hosted via GitHub. I would like to change that today. So let's go ahead and, first of all, SSH right back into the server once again, and cd into that repos folder, and we can remove that test folder. We don't need that. What we will go ahead and do is create a new directory called T3, okay? And if we cd into that directory, we'll go ahead and run the git init bear again, right? And that'll create just a blank repository for us, same way as we did before. Go ahead and exit that server. And actually, we shouldn't have exited that quickly. Git was trying to have our back here and let us know that repository here is going to default to using the master branch, which isn't really an issue if it's a brand new repository. I don't really care. I'll use a branch called master instead of main, whatever. But it is going to be an issue if we're pulling from something that we already created that uses the main branch. So just to confirm real quick, right? If we go into the document, cd onto T3, right? And we run the old git branch command, indeed, we are using the main branch. So while we're in the server, let's go ahead and fix the issue by doing exactly what it tells us to do, right? We're going to run git branch, branch-m, and we're going to name it, and we'll name it the main branch. That should fix an issue that we're going to have, which we will 100% run into if we're trying to push an existing repository. Anyways, now that we're in here, if we do the git remote -v, you can see it's going to want to be pushing to GitHub. We want to go ahead and change that. We'll change it the same way that we did before when we were trying to fix our issues. We'll do git remote set URL origin, origin, and we're going to set it to Mac at MAKC transit : /home Mac download, repos /T3, right? We go ahead and do the git remote -v again. That looks a little more like it. And we should be able to go ahead and run the old git push -u origin main. And let's go ahead and just check our work real quickly. Assuming that we have successfully migrated this to the private server, we should be able to just do a git clone the way that we did earlier with our brand new repository. So we do git clone Mac at MAKC transit home Mac repos /T3, and go ahead and hit enter. Give it the old password, and it appears to be cloning correctly. Okay, let's take a look-see here, and look at that, all our nice files ready to rock and roll. But thank you everyone for checking out my once yearly YouTube video. That's going to be it for this one. Happy trails out there, guys, and I will see you the next time I upload a video, probably next year.